I was going to say, let's just hear the conversation. Probably going to be better than what we're talking about.
Hard copy. The picture of the other girl that I think the baby online for Bruce Prices.
Mr. Mayor, it's time.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for invocation by Pastor Mitch Nelson. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor Mitch.
Mayor, council members, people of the public, thank you very much for inviting me here this evening. We bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening in thanksgiving. We thank you for a new day, a life, and for opportunities. Lord, as you instruct us in your word, we pray for our local leaders this evening. We pray for our mayor, our city council, county commissioners, police chief, judges, our leaders in the border patrol, customs, and sheriff office, local business owners, and all who serve in our local communities. We pray for open minds and listening ears, that our leaders would be open to wise counsel from all the leaders within our community. Strengthen them with your wisdom and give them grace for the heavy burdens they carry. May they manage their teams, projects with love. Keep their hearts pure and their eyes turned towards your face as they work in the best interests of the people of Douglas in whom they are called to serve. All these things we ask in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen. Pastor Mitch, if you'd stay for a second and tell us a little bit about your ministry and where you're located and all those good things.
Sure. I am a co-pastor at Faith Ministries Church. It's a larger corporation called Faith Ministries Incorporated. The senior pastors are Pastors Calvin and Barbara Scott, and our ministry is local here on 901 11th Street. I don't know if you've been down 11th Street. It's the big brick building with the ivy cross. And the primary ministry is here in Douglas, and then we support about anywhere from 30 to 40 churches in Mexico, all through Sonora and into Chihuahua. It's
Wonderful. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your prayers for Douglas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 4, roll call, please.
Mayor Donald Hewish,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales,
Present.
Councilmember Mitch Lindemann,
Here.
Councilmember Dania Costa,
Present.
Councilmember Ray Shelton.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Shelton, can you please provide us with your password?
Okay, W4-1014.
Thank you. And what is your location?
I'm at my house on 14th Street.
And is anyone else with you?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Councilmember Michael Valdenegro,
Present.
Councilmember Jose Grijalva,
Here.
Interim City Manager Don Prince,
Present.
City Attorney Juan Pablo Flores,
Present.
City Treasurer Luis Pedrosa.
Present.
Thank you. Item number 5, persons wishing to address the council in writing or verbally on any item not on the agenda. Ms. Andrade, do we have anybody this evening?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any requests for number 5.
Thank you very much. Item number 6, presentation of awards. We're going to postpone item number 8. If you have an agenda in front of you, is honoring Mr. Shelton for his 8 years of service. We'll do that when he's able to meet with us again next month. We'll go to item 6B, local business recognition by Mayor Pro Tempore Morales. Ms. Morales?
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight, in continuing to recognize our local businesses, I have several that I'd like to recognize. I have 2, or actually 3 that are not here tonight, so I would like to at least call out their names. 15 years is Lupita Salon, and 25 years is JMP Auto Shop, and 30 years is Christine Gomez, the dentist, and they are not able to make it tonight. I know that Ms. Gomez asked to come to the next meeting, so I will postpone her award for next month. So I do have a couple of presentations. For 5 years, I'd like to recognize H&M Remodeling. Want to come up? Tractor Supply for 5 years, and I also have 30 years service to the Douglas Community, Maddox and Sons.
I think they want a picture. Clint? They could.
Was anybody going to come from H&M? H&M.
Actually, David, just come yours. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for being part of our wonderful community. Also with that presentation of awards, item 6C, we're going to hold off until next month on that one also. So we'll go to item number 7, decision on approval of consent agenda items. Item A, expenditures for the month of September 2020 totaling $2,934,167.54. B, approval of meeting minutes for August 4th, August 12th, August 26th, and September 9, 2020. Item C, boards, committee, and commission appointments effective October 14th, 2020. To the Airport Authority Board appointment, Mr. Pedro Ochoa. Board of Adjustment reappointment, Mr. Michael Molina Sr. Douglas Community Housing Corporation, Rancho La Parrilla Apartments appointment, Ms. Denise Machado and Ms. Desiree Rice. Industrial Development Authority appointment of Ms. Luana Diffie. Acceptance of Planning and Zoning Commission resignation of Ms. Monica Romero, and Planning and Zoning Commission appointment of Mr. Alfredo Garcia. Item D, approval of the netcraft.com Inc. referral agreement for purpose of marketing the ridership tracking application developed by the Transit Division. And item E, Industrial Development Authority, IDA, grant funding acceptance in the amount of $25,925.13 for the purchase of an outdoor inflatable movie screen system for the community. May I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Morales,
I move that mayor and council approve consent agenda items as presented.
is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Morales, second by Mrs. Acosta to approve the consent agenda items. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, before the roll call, do you want to issue the certificates? You want me to proceed with the roll call?
Let's make sure they get approved. There's one out there that I'm not so sure on. Right, Desiree?
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mayor Potempo Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. So if we could have Ms. Desiree Rice and Denise Machado please come up. So it's just Desiree. Thank you so much for your willingness to serve. He wants to take a nice picture of you. We'll move to agenda item 8, Domestic Violence Awareness Month proclamation. Whereas domestic violence is the leading cause of injury to women between the ages of 15 to 44, and whereas in Arizona from January 1st, 1998 to the present, 2,160 people lost their lives due to domestic violence. And whereas female crime victims are nearly twice as likely to be injured by an intimate partner than by a stranger. And whereas nearly 40% of American women report being physically or sexually abused by a husband or boyfriend at some point in their lives, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And whereas domestic violence has injured and taken the lives of our friends, colleagues, and family members, and affects the entire community. And whereas domestic violence education, prevention, advocacy, enforcement, and prosecution need increased public attention and support. And whereas the health, safety, and well-being of women and children is now and must always continue to be one of our community's highest priorities. And whereas freedom from domestic violence is a fundamental human right and transcends race, national origin, and citizenship. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Donald Hewish, Mayor, and on behalf of the City of Douglas, Arizona, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2020 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we pray to God that it'll stop. Tanya, if you come up, okay.
picture.
Thank you.
We'd like to take a picture of us.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Shelton.
we just got a phone call, my wife did, and she came in and told me we need to turn the volume up on the video that is streaming out to the public.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll get after that. Item number 9, discussion, direction with possible decision on council's recommendation pertaining to face coverings. What I've asked the council to do this evening, well, previously, is to reach out to their constituency to ask how they feel the requirement for face coverings is going and whether or not it needs to be continued at this point in time. And now we've asked each council member to take it up to at least, if they want to, up to 3 minutes to express what they found out from their constituencies, and then I'll also express their thoughts regarding the matter. So I'd like to start at the opposite end this time, to my left. So Councilman Grijalva, would you lead us off, please?
Thank you, Mayor. As far as people reaching out to us, I know that council, that people did email us with their concerns. As far as with the community that I talked to, it was basically split. You know, there was a handful of people who want to do away with the masks. There was also, I talked to 2 restaurants, one that was having problems with the masks, that they were being affected with their service, their waiters. And then there was another restaurant who reached out to me who said that they'd like the mask to stay, the mandate to stay. My opinion, Mayor, I don't think we have enough involvement with the community to do much. As far as this, it's not as much involvement as we had last time, where we had a big old sheet of papers with their concerns. I do think that at some point, because some businesses are suffering because of the mandate, customers having their preference with masks or not wearing masks, we should take into account a personal responsibility. If a business doesn't want masks, I don't think we should force them, maybe later on. And if they do want masks, I think our residents should respect those businesses that do want masks. But right now, personally, I don't think we have enough public participation for us to change direction.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Mr. Valdenegro?
I feel that we should leave the masks. The constituents, I haven't heard from them since the first time when we decided as a city council and mayor to update and make sure that everybody wore a mask. Since I'm not the president of the United States, I don't have his medical team working for me. And I don't think anybody here in Douglas has the same type of medical team. I believe that we should leave the face coverings on just for the people's sake, because it's on the uprise, and I feel the flu season's coming up, and there's no vaccine for us right now, and nobody else in this county has the neighbor that we have on our southern border. So I just feel that we should just keep the face coverings, and if people want to wear them, it's up to them, but I feel that we should still make it mandatory.
Thank you, Mr. Valdenegro. Mr. Shelton, please.
Okay, I've had 6 people contact me, and they definitely want to keep the mask. And I've had one person personally come up and tell me that on the street. And personally, I think we should keep up the masking, because we do not want this COVID to come back and this like it did before, because that's what's happening in the world and in many regions of our country. So I think we should keep the mask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Mrs. Acosta?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I went out ahead and published the survey through social media with the responses that I received was 80%, 82.5% for people wanting to keep the mask mandate, and the rest not. 17.5% did not want to continue the mandate. The response is overwhelming for people being skeptical about us removing this mandate. Obviously, like it's already been brought up, flu season is coming up upon us, and I think there's just a lot of contradicting information out there that doesn't make anybody feel any safer knowing there's really no concrete, I guess, evidence, either or whether masks are good or not. But like Mr. Shelton said, there are other places in the world that first got hit with COVID and are starting to see a spike up again. So it would seem to me that it'd be in the best interest of the community to continue with the mask mandate.
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. Mr. Lindeman?
Thank you, Mayor. The majority of people that have contacted me and that I have contacted want the requirement to stay in place for masks. I think it's doing a good job. We are going to have a spike in the cases that's happening, and this is the way to combat that. We're not out of the woods yet. And so I think that it's a civic responsibility for all of us to continue with the masks, and mostly the citizens will follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindeman. Mrs. Morales?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've had several citizens reach out to me, and I have more yeses for keeping the mask mandate in place. I know there's some that are not in favor of it, but I work with it on a daily basis. And last week there was a spike, according to statistics that I got from the county, that we had the cases rose from 18 to 43, and today there was an additional 18 additional cases in the county. I believe also that with the flu season coming up, that we will see a spike in our numbers. We are not out of the woods again. I agree with the fellow council members here. We're not sure what's going to happen. I know the vaccine is going to take some time. It may be done by the end of the year, but I heard on the news today that AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson have pulled back because some of the testing that they've done has not proven to be effective. So I strongly believe that we need to continue to wear the mask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Morales. And that leaves me. I hear loud and clear what you're telling me and what we're hearing. However, I think it would be remiss if I didn't express some of the feelings that I have. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the community for cooperating. I don't know how else to put it. It's been fantastic. This community has responded to this requirement that has provided relief to many people, and it's also provided quite a bit of consternation to others, and I understand that. But overall, the community has been very forthright and forthcoming in participating and trying to do what's best for their neighbor. And I applaud each and every one of the members of this community, and it does my heart good to see that cooperative nature that's there. Now, when it comes to the science of face masks, because the people that contacted me were right about 50-50, and I have to admit, because they know my feelings about face coverings, that I feel very strongly it should be a personal choice. And so I'm sure I get more of those people contacting me because they know that I share their similar views. And so, it was about 50-50 from the people that contacted me, and of course, again, I'm probably skewed a little bit because I'm getting more of the people that agree with my way of thinking. And so I've received different references to science, and I'll tell you, my head was swimming after I got done reading them all because they're all over the place. You need them. They really don't do anything. But I think the bottom line is that they provide a level of comfort to people. And I think at this point in time, that's probably more important than anything else. I would hope that we get to the point where we put some of this fear behind us, that we realize that we need to figure out a way to get on with our lives and be safe and do the things that they're doing. One of the most powerful things that I read in my research and people sent me is a thing called the Great Barrington Declaration, which I would encourage you, each and every one of you, to look that up. It talks very strongly about protecting our vulnerable population, which is our elderly, nursing homes, those type of things. And it also speaks to we need to get on with our life, the rest of us. And so it's something that is to me, if it was just my philosophy, of course we wouldn't have a mask, a face covering requirement. But I see what the community needs right now, and I believe we still need it. As much as I'd like to rip them off. Having said that, I would also encourage us to continue to cooperate with each other, to continue to be good citizens, to continue to show kindness and respect to others. I always chuckle when I hear the stories in our neighboring cities in our county where people are chastising and pointing the finger and getting in arguments with people. And I say that doesn't happen here in my community. We understand, if we see somebody without a mask, that it's their business. And we also see that we also chip in and say, hey, I'm going to be around a lot of people, I need to put one on. So I again applaud our community so much for that. I would lastly encourage everyone to look for activities where you can take your mask off. We have to get out there and we have to be able to enjoy life. And so look for those things that you can do. A walk in the park with your family. Those type of activities that you can safely do around people. Keep your distance and wash your hands. That seems to be the biggest thing to help. When it comes to it, I find myself, I used to be a person that would constantly get closer as we talked. And now I find myself backing up as we talk. And that saddens me because there's so many people out there that I want to give a hug to. And not only because I need it, but I know they need it. And so this stuff of virtual hugs and stuff like that, I'm sorry, it just doesn't do it. So, but look for those activities and be smart. If you're been to a place where it's possible, any type of minute exposure, go wash up when you get home. Even when I get home, sometimes when I've been around quite a lot of people, I even wash my face. And at the extreme, if I feel it's been real bad, I put my clothes in the wash and jump in the shower. But that's because I have underlying conditions, and that's part of my life, and I understand that, and that's fine. But look for activities where you can do things where you don't have to wear a mask. Because we have to somehow get to a point where we can remove some of the ills that have been a result of this. This proclamation that I just read, that's gone up since we've been having to isolate and put on masks and stuff like that, and it makes my heart bleed. The suicides, the opioid abuses, the drug overdoses that I read about just yesterday morning have gone up astronomically. alcoholism. And it saddens me that that's one of the results. So I think we all have a part to play in encouraging each other, being on the lookout for people that you may think that may see them as vulnerable. Invite them to maybe to walk in the park with you and just keep your distance. Do those kind of things to help people be able to work through this. But I hear what everybody's saying, and so I don't even think we need to take a vote. We'll just continue on because we have it in place, and we'll discuss it again as we progress along and hopefully get to a point where we can put some of those fears behind us and be able to open up. And again, I appreciate the public for their input and also for their willingness to cooperate. So we'll move on to item number 10, discussion decision on approval of third reading of ordinance number 20-1120, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, amending Article 5 of the zoning regulations, Section 501.7, property development standards, and Section 501.8, corner lot, all pertaining to carports, establishing severability of components of ordinance, and establishing an effective date thereof. Mr. Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As stated, this is the third reading of this ordinance. It was tabled at the last meeting to ask the Planning Commission to review one portion of it, which they have done, and we'll talk about that here. So there was a request to look at moving the carports into the front setbacks, closer to the street in these particular areas. So on September 30th, the Planning Commission did meet and discuss this, and they had a very lengthy, very spirited discussion. And in the end, they did vote 4-0 to recommend reducing the front setback for carports in these particular zoning districts to 10 feet from 20 and 25 feet respectively. Something we didn't look at last time is what areas are affected by this. I was remiss in that I just did what planners do and assumed everybody knows the rules like I do. So to be clear, what areas are impacted? What areas would these be allowed in? It's the SFR 6 and SFR 8. Well, what that means is single-family homes of 6,000 or 8,000 square foot minimum lots. On this map, that's it's the pale orange and the yellow. So you see it's a very large portion of Douglas. It's almost all of the west side and the center part of town. The east side tends to be bigger lots. So this is, while from a zoning point of view is a very limited change, physically on the street, all of these changes do encompass a very large area. So this slide kind of shows what is currently permitted and would be permitted under the changes of the first two readings, and then what the Planning Commission recommended prior to this third reading. So in yellow, we'd see what is permitted both now, what would be permitted under the first two readings. The way it was written, this change was written originally. We do permit that 0-foot setback on the side, and it's currently permitted a 6-foot intrusion into the 20 or 25 feet. This is a block of 10th Street just west of the fire station for reference. To give you an idea, you can kind of picture what these lots look like. So again, that yellow would be permitted the way this was originally presented. The blue is what would be permitted if the Planning Commission's recommendation is enacted. You see that we're going to jump out an extra 10 to 15 feet towards the street, and we can see how that line of construction changes quite substantially once we start allowing these carports to intrude into the front setback. And I'll come back to the slide when there's questions, but I do want to talk about what does staff recommend. Staff does not actually recommend adopting this change for a couple of reasons, primarily safety and aesthetics. We are concerned about safety because carports are often, it's very easy to say carports only can intrude, but they get enclosed very rapidly. We've had some trouble with this. The porches are currently allowed to intrude 6 feet along with some carports, and those get enclosed into rooms sometimes over a weekend and we don't notice them. And now the intent of the rules aren't being followed. And now we start getting, unlike we see here where we've got this nice line of the houses, we start getting this mismatch of things sticking out further, and maybe this one's at 10 feet, this one's at 25 feet, and that can cause some aesthetic concerns that the council may wish to take into consideration. The other concern that we have is we're talking, if we're reducing 20 or 25 feet to 10, that gives us an extra 10 or 15 feet That's not really enough to cover a car, except for a very small car. A standard parking space, for reference, is 19 feet deep. And we see a lot of the big trucks don't really even fit into those. So we're still looking at, even if we do this, we may still see people's cars are poking out from the sides. So again, what was presented for the first two readings is the yellow. The amendment potentially proposed by the Planning Commission includes those blue changes. And I guess I have a question slide, but this is probably a better slide for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. And just by way of reference of how the relationship between the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission, they are a recommendation body in these type of things, so it's actual council decision. I'm just pointing that out, that's how it works. We wanted the input of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that's why we tabled it and sent it that way. And I also appreciate Mr. Gardner for saying what staff believes what's best. So may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Morales?
I move that Mayor and Council approve the third reading of ordinance number 20-1120 by number and title only.
There's a motion by Mrs. Morales and a second by Mr. Grijalva to approve the third reading. Questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment.
Please, Mr. Lindeman.
First of all, you know that why this is such a hard decision is because there are no properties in there that are uniform in this town. Everything is different. And it's hard to come up with a rule that would cover everybody when everything's different. And simply, we just want to allow a person to, or a taxpayer or homeowner, to cover the spot where they park. Oftentimes, you've got a lot of investment in your car. And as far as aesthetics, you know, that opens up a whole other can of worms. Who's going to judge that? You know, and I'm like, you know, I as a taxpayer want to use my property that I pay taxes on. If I would construct something, that brings further revenue into the city. So I think that should be a good thing. Definitely, when you factor in the city right away, oftentimes there's more than enough space to cover the safety. You know, a lot of times your property line and then you go to the street, well, there's a lot of space there. So I'm thinking that in order to make it most flexible, I want to make an amendment, and I move to approve ordinance 20-1120. Mrs. Rouse already said that. But I would like to reduce the setbacks to 5 feet and repeal the 6-foot conditional front yard setback encroachments, carport permitted by ordinance 14-1033.
So there's a motion to amend, you said to 5 feet, is that correct?
Yes, I'd like to go to 5 feet because, as Mr. Gardner said, 10 feet may not be enough, and you just want a flexibility to cover your
Okay.
requirement.
But I just want to make sure everybody understands, so make the amendment to reduce the setback to 5 feet for carports, right? For carports only. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Mr. Valdenegro. Any other questions or discussion? Let me get these guys first, Mr. Ambrose, and then see if they have anything.
Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Grijalva.
I'd like staff to actually comment on it, since I'm guessing that amendment isn't part of their recommendation. Can we have Mr. Gardner come up and give us his thoughts, or staff's thoughts on that?
Please, Mr. Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. From a staff point of view, since staff would not recommend reducing the setback to 10 feet, we certainly would not recommend decreasing it anymore for the same reasons.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner, before you leave real
Yes,
quick, is there a method in place right now under our existing ordinances and regulations that would allow someone to petition individually to be able to put it at 10 or 5 or 0?
Certainly, the Board of Adjustments does have the authority to grant variances from the zoning regulations. There are some criteria that are applicable, so it does take a pretty good case to convince the man to follow the law, but there is a relief mechanism for properties that have some unique constraints.
Okay. And that's a application and then
An application,
A
and
fee?
a public hearing, and a fee, and a docket with the appointed Board of Adjustments, the city appointed Board of Adjustments that is separate from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And when they make a decision, if the property owner is not happy with that, what's their recourse? Is it here? Where
It
to go?
is actually Superior Court.
To Superior Court.
Any party
So-
agreed can go to court.
So that's a little bit of a difference of how those things operate, just for the council's edification. Okay. Any other questions from the council? Mr. Ambriz, did you have a comment you'd like to make?
Yes, my name is Frank Ambriz. I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I noticed that we were talking about corner lots here. And those are interior lots that were shown in the area there. So there is when we met on the 30th of September, we brought the idea from staff. We asked the staff to see what the recommendation was, and they said to keep it the way it is. So I threw some other ideas into the other members, saying about 0 setbacks. Some members weren't very happy with that, so I told them, well, if we're not happy with 0, let's go 6 feet. Then they started throwing the idea, maybe let's go half and go to 10. So that's where we stand with it.
So the planning, if I could understand, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended 10.
Mhm.
Okay. But just so you know, Mr. Lindeman's motion was 5. And I'm not pointing that out as a conflict. I'm just saying that's just so you understand.
Mhm.
Everybody's on the same page.
And to go into the Board of Adjustment, you have to meet some criteria from the statute.
Right.
And if you don't meet that criteria, which is very hard to meet it in flat areas here, the lots and so forth, you cannot meet it. Take my experience for it. So,
What you're saying is that it's restrictive.
very restrictive.
Okay.
To go to the Board of Adjustment and get, you have to prove a lot of facts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion or questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Shelton. Mr. Shelton, please go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Ambriz, what would you recommend, 5 or 10?
My recommendation would have been 5 feet.
Okay,
Because then we could still have that side triangle that we're talking about. It's 33 feet from the back of the curb to the back of the curb. If you're within that side triangle, you can't build anything, only probably bushes or shrubs. So you have to meet that triangle. That governs.
okay, well, okay, thank you.
Well, Mr. Ambriso, just for clarification, Mr. Shelton, so that's your personal feelings that 5 would be good
As a member.
as a member, but the overall Planning and Zoning
10 feet.
Commission recommended 10.
10 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Makes sense? Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you for your work, Mr. Ambriz, along with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Appreciate that. And Mr. Gardner, of course, always is doing the yeoman work. Okay, we have an amendment on the floor to change the setback to 5 feet, reducing the front yard setbacks for unenclosed carports to 5 feet in SFR 6 and SFR 8. And I'm sorry, Mr. Lindeman, did you include the repealing of that 6 feet?
Yeah,
Kinda extra?
I think I did.
Yeah, I believe so too. Okay, that was made by Mr. Lindeman and seconded by Mr. Valdenegro. So we'll vote on that amendment portion first. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Grijalva,
No.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
No.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales,
No.
Mr. Mayor,
The mayor votes no, so the motion fails. Go back to the original motion to approve the third reading of ordinance number 20-1120. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, amending Article 5 of the zoning regulations, Section 501.7, property development standards, and Section 501.8, corner lot, all pertaining to carports, establishing severability of components of ordinance, and establishing an effective date thereof.
Thank you. Item number 11, discussion decision on approval of third reading of ordinance number 20-1121, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, modifying Title 8 of the Douglas Municipal Code relating to health and safety by amending ordinance 616 under chapter 8.28, regulating noise, establishing severability of components of ordinance, and establishing an effective date thereof. Chief Fuller?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As stated, this is the third reading of the proposed amendments to the ordinance. There hasn't been any additions or changes since the last presentation before mayor and council, and we are asking staff, or mayor and council, to approve.
Thank you, Chief Fuller. May I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mrs. Morales?
I move that Mayor and Council approve the third reading of ordinance number 20-1121 by number and title only.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Morales, second by Mr. Valdenegro, to approve the third reading of ordinance number 20-1121. Any questions, discussion? Ms. Andrade, do we have someone that would like to speak to this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, let me call Mr. Otero.
Okay. We received a request by Mr. Humberto Otero to speak to this issue, so we will reach him right now.
Good evening, Mr. Otero.
Good evening.
Hi, this is Alma calling from the city of Douglas.
Yes.
You have the open phone communication with mayor and council to address the noise ordinance. If you can please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, it's Humberto Otero. My address is 1255 12th Street, Douglas, Arizona.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Jewish and Council. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. I also had a comment for Councilman Sheldon. I don't know if he's in today or not, but on the August 12 meeting, he made a comment, if your neighbor was making a lot of noise, you hope the fines would be $500. I just want to say, Mr. Councilman Sheldon, how correct you are. And that brings me to my 4th of July, which I'd like to share with all of you. On the 4th of July at 6 p.m., my family and friends sat out to enjoy a barbecue and a quiet evening when a full band started playing. At this point, we couldn't even hear each other talking. So I called the Douglas Police Department at 6:15, told the dispatcher what was going on. At 6:30, the band was still playing. I called the Douglas Police Department to find out what happened. The dispatcher informed me that the officers did go by
Thank-
going through all this, when I called at the end at 2:30 in the morning, I felt like I wasted my time. I wasted the dispatcher's time, and I also wasted the police department's time and the police officers because nothing was ever done about it. So I hope you listen and take this into consideration when doing something about this noise that we have in Douglas. Again, Mayor Hewitt and Council, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. I'm not sure if you're like to stay on the line. We have Chief Fullen here that would address those two questions. Hopefully, be able to explain what the ordinance will do now should it pass.
Yes, I would like to stay on.
Okay,
Thank you.
Chief Fullen, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the intent behind the amendment to the ordinance was to address really the specific issue that Mr. Otero has shared with the hours of when the ordinance is in effect, primarily right now between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. But with the amendments as proposed, it would allow us to enforce the noise if it happens to cross the property boundary at any point. And it becomes a nuisance or it's deemed to be unnecessary, unreasonable noise.
And then as far as the warnings and fines, that could all happen in one evening or over a period of time?
That is correct. So if we have our first response, once this ordinance takes effect, the first response would be a warning. If we return that same evening, then they are subject to a fine.
Does that answer your questions, Mr. Otero?
Yes, it did. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Otero, for your interest in the community.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, too.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
I just wonder.
Yes, I have a question.
Mr. Shelton, please.
Yes, Chris. How much is the fine going to be?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Councilmember Shelton, I don't have the fines directly in front of me. If you can give me just a second.
It was 250 the first time.
Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Shelton, the first violation would be $100. Second violation would be $250. Third and subsequent violations would be $500.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baldenegro, please.
Mr. Fuller, at what decibel point are we looking at? Being a noise level for the neighbors?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Baldenegro, it's not based on a decimal level, it's based on our ability to hear it across that boundary line within 50 feet or within 50 feet of the device producing the noise. So if it's a residential area, it would be 50 feet from the boundary of the property. And if it's from a vehicle, for example, it would be 50 feet from the vehicle.
Thank you.
Mr. Grijalva, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, so the first one's a warning, right? And then it's the $100 fine. So to Mr. Otero's point, what if it's a second night? Is it going to be a warning and then the fine goes up after the second warning, or is the fine going, or are we going to be enforcing the fines right after?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Grijalva, the intent is for self-compliance. Ideally, we would like people to comply with the ordinance based off of the warning. If there is a need, like a second night, in your example, they've already been cited for the previous night, so they would be subject to a citation the following night. It's any second or subsequent violation within a 120-day period.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And again, you know, we encourage people to inform their neighbors. This is what I got going on. Try to be a good neighbor, and if all else fails, invite them over. to come. Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Grijalva?
I'd like to explain my vote really quick, Mayor. I know I disagreed with the fines. I still think the first one's excessive, but I think we need to be unified in this as a council and as a city. So I'd like to vote yes on this ordinance.
Councilmember Valdenegro?
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton?
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta?
Yes.
Councilmember Lindemann?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Mayor votes yes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Otero.
Thank you very much.
An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, modifying Title 8 of the Douglas Municipal Code relating to health and safety by amending Ordinance 616 under Chapter 8.28, regulating noise, establishing severability of components of ordinance, and establishing an effective date thereof.
Thank you. Item number 12, discussion decision on approval of first reading of ordinance number 20-1122. An ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, authorizing the sale of a semi-improved parcel of land located on the 900 block of 2nd Street, lots 11 and 12, parcel number 409-14-093C, to Joseph L. Garcia and Maria de la Luz Garcia, husband and wife, pursuant to terms entered into by the parties, establishing severability of components of ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof. Ms. Prince or Mr. Flores, who wants, Mr. Flores, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Basically, this item is pursuant to conversations and negotiations we've had with the Garcias. They are prepared to purchase lots 11 and 12 and obtain a right of first refusal for lots 13 through 16. Purchase price is going to be $12,500 for those two lots, and the right of first refusal is going to be for a total of $20,000, which complies with current estimates that we have by way of brokers' opinions in terms of what that property is worth. They're going to be making two installments, $6,500 at the time of closing. The second payment of $6,000 is going to be within 6 months, and we intend to proceed quickly. Hopefully, get a second reading at potentially at a study session later on in the month, with a possibility. And but in any event, does the mayor and council have any questions?
If, Ms. Prince, would you mind speaking to a little bit of the due diligence that we did as far as looking into if anybody else had interest, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so, Mayor and members of the council, we did explore several options on this property, including looking at how the city acquired the property, and ultimately the property was purchased from the Garcias, and so we just thought it in the best interest that if they have an interest to purchase it back, that it go back to them and their family. So that's kind of the due diligence that we did on why this property is coming forward to you this way.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Morales?
I move that mayor and council approve the placement of ordinance number 20-1122 on its first reading by number and title only.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Morales, second by Mr. Shelton to place ordinance number 20-1122 on first reading by number and title only. Any discussion or questions, comments from the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mrs. Morales.
Just wanted to note that I did speak to the Garcias, and they were very much appreciative. They really want to obtain these lots again, and I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do, but I know he's been watering the trees there, and he's been keeping up the landscaping there, so.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, authorizing the sale of a semi-improved parcel of land located on the 900 block of Second Street, lots 11 and 12, within parcel number 409-14-093C, to Joseph L. Garcia and Maria de la Luz Garcia, husband and wife, pursuant to terms entered into by the parties, establishing severability of components of ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the first reading?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Morales.
I move that Mayor and Council approve the first reading of ordinance number 20-1122 and to place it on second reading by number and title only.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Morales, second by Mrs. Acosta, to approve the first reading and place it on of ordinance number 20-1122 and place it on second reading by number and title only. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, authorizing the sale of a semi-improved parcel of land located on the 900 block of Second Street, lots 11 and 12, within parcel number 409-14-093C, to Joseph L. Garcia and Maria de la Luz Garcia, husband and wife, pursuant to terms entered into by the parties, establishing severability of components of ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof.
Thank you. Item number 13, discussion decision on approval of resolution number 20-1439, a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, updating various job descriptions for the Public Works Department and establishing severability of components. Ms. Garcia Pedrosa, please.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Back here, hopefully per the last department on the job description changes, we were able to meet with our public works supervisors and identified about 22 job descriptions that needed to be changed. So this is the packet that you have before you. We might still have a couple from different departments and public works later on, but this is the majority of them that are coming before you.
Does anybody want her to read each and every one of the changes? Thank you. May I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Morales?
I move that Mayor and Council approve resolution number 20-1439.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Morales, second by Mr. Valdenegro to approve resolution number 20-1439. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call please.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries. Item number 14, discussion decision on approval of resolution number 20-1440, a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, authorizing the city to administer the existing historic district commercial facade improvement program for the community. Mr. Gardner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The first thing I want to do is make clear that this is not a new program. This is an existing program that has been utilized in this fiscal year. So it is entirely in the downtown historic district, which is outlined in the brown there. So it's not a very large area, but this is the affected area, and it is limited to commercial businesses only. The funds are allocated for businesses.
Mr. Gardner, could you go back to that a little bit so everybody has a
Absolutely.
chance to look that over in the audience? And see where it's at.
So you'll see it does include City Hall, Castro Park, Church Square. It does go down 6 to about 6th Street for that little notch down at the bottom. We have a number of programs that are centered on the historic district. It does impact a few things.
Thank you.
So this is for appearances. It's a program that has been run in the past through the Douglas Realtors Association, which did disband, and that caused us a bit of trouble when we did use it earlier this year. Notably, it is for cosmetic improvements only. It does not cover structural repairs unless they are also cosmetic. We did do one building this year, the La Familia building, the Irene building, which was repainted under the program. And this is where we ran into a lot of struggles since we had to go through the organization that had kind of subsumed the Douglas Realtors Association. And it really made the whole process very complicated beginning to end. Whereas it would be a lot easier to just bring it straight back in-house. So this is what we did. We went from this to this. We did split the cost 50-50, and that's what the program would do. We would require it to be administered completely by the Development Services Department. Wouldn't involve any boards or commissions because it's a really straightforward program. Does it fit? Does it not fit? We would require a business to have a current business license so that we're doing it for operating businesses rather than to folks that are just trying to spruce up a building for sale. Applications will be done on a first-come, first-served basis. They'll be done on a 50-50 basis, so it's not the city paying the entire amount. We would be covering half. And there's about $6,000 left for this fiscal year. This is to redo paint, to redo siding, windows, exterior lighting, anything that's going to spruce up a side of the building visible from the street. You can't do it in the back. It's nothing inside. It's purely just to enhance the exterior aesthetics. Again, I just want to reiterate, not a new program. We're not requesting any new money. It's just bringing in-house a program that had been a partnership with an organization that no longer exists.
And the total amount of money that's
we've got about
budgeted?
$6,000 left.
What's the normal budget?
About $10,000.
$10,000.
And so all we're looking for is approval of the resolution so that we can bring this in-house. We do actually have some folks waiting, and we can start cranking these out and just doing that little extra pizzazz for Main Street for the most part, for G Avenue for the most part.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
Mayor,
Mr. Lindeman.
I move that the mayor and council approve resolution number 20-1440.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lindeman, second by Mr. Baldanegro to approve resolution number 20-1440. Any questions, comments?
I have a comment.
Please, Mr. Lindeman.
I appreciate the work that Mr. Gardner has done. I know this is a ongoing program. And I brought up a concern a while ago that I was uncomfortable with using taxpayer money on a private business. But the match seems to bridge that gap. So I'm happy that we have that. Thank you.
Very, very good input, Mr. Lindeman. Appreciate that. Mr. Valdenegro?
I was just wondering if we could increase the funding for that program?
Certainly, if the council decides to give us more money, we'd be thrilled to take more money and do more businesses.
They're trying to improve the look of Douglas and everything else.
That's a budget item that I'm sure will appear somewhere next year, and you'll have the opportunity to increase it to an amount that you feel comfortable with. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Grijalva.
I just wanted to thank also Mr. Gardner because, when he says that it was difficult, I'm on G Avenue a lot of the time on the weekdays since I go to the gym there, and when he says difficult, he means me. Because I kept going into his office saying, when are we going to get this done? When are we going to get this done? So I appreciate it, and the businesses that are in, waiting are very excited, and the faster we can do this, the faster we can redo G Avenue, liven it up, the faster it can pick up. So I thank you again, and to all the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Shelton? Councilmember Shelton?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro?
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva?
Yes.
Councilmember Lindeman?
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, motion carries. Item number 15, discussion decision on approval of resolution number 20-1441. A resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, authorizing the Douglas Police Department to accept grant funding and enter into an agreement with the State of Arizona Attorney General's Office for a reimbursable grant in the amount of $25,000 to pay for law enforcement equipment to be used for training in force application under the state-funded grant program. Chief Fuller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As noted, the department received notice of the availability of $25,000 in grant funding from the Arizona Attorney General's office. These were funds that were set aside as a portion of the Wells Fargo multi-state settlement monies. And they're using it for the purposes of funding requests by the Arizona law enforcement agencies to procure public safety equipment that is not currently funded by other sources. So we submitted a proposal for the purchase of a desktop training simulator, which contains numerous training scenarios which will be used by our officers in force application, de-escalation, and overall judgment at a cost of approximately $21,600. The remaining funds will be used to purchase 8 Pepper Ball less lethal platforms, which will give officers 24/7 access and expand our less lethal options. The overage, estimated to be about $1,000, would be covered through the department's training line item. We are asking for your consideration and approval.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief. May I have a motion? Mayor. Mr. Valdenegro.
That the mayor and council approve resolution number 20-1441.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Valdenegro, second by Mr. Shelton to approve resolution number 20-1441. Any questions for the chief?
I just have a comment, if I may.
Oh, please, Mr. Lindeman.
I just wanted to commend the chief again and his staff and everyone for looking for these and ultimately receiving the grants that we get. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we all echo that. Thank you for stating that, Mr. Lindeman. Mrs. Acosta?
I believe I need to recuse myself from voting on this item.
That would be fine, if you feel that way. So Mrs. Acosta will recuse herself from discussing and voting on this item at 7:10. Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindeman,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Motion approved. Resolution approved. Great. Item number 16, discussion and decision on approval of resolution number 20-1442. A resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of grant funding in the amount of $2,500 from the Walmart Community Grants Program to be used for the Douglas Police Department's annual Cops and Kids event in the city of Douglas. Chief Fuller?
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The department was selected to receive a grant in the amount of $2,500 from Walmart for inclusion or consideration for the department's Cops and Kids holiday program and event. The grant was submitted by Officer Jamilet Barrios, and this event focuses on our less fortunate families and those families that are otherwise struggling during the holiday season. Provides an opportunity for our department employees to make a positive impact in these community members' lives as well as their own lives. We have received this grant previously from Walmart. Last year it was in the same amount of $2,500 and $1,000 the year before that. So we are certainly appreciative of their partnership and support.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
Mayor,
Mr. Valdenegro?
I vote that the mayor and council approve resolution number 20-1442.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Valdenegro, seconded by Mrs. Acosta to approve resolution number 20-1442. Any questions, comments, discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Grijalva.
I'd just like to thank the police department and also Officer Barrios for this, because as the mayor mentioned, these aren't the easiest times that we're going through, So this means probably more than ever to have a program like this, especially for our youth. So thank you.
I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Anybody else? Hearing none? Oh, yes, Mr. Valdenegro, please.
I just want to know how the police department is going to do this program. A ride along or a parade or for the families or?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Valdenegro, what we've done is we've partnered with Walmart, so we have a morning set aside where we have a select number of families that we can provide these services to, and we take them on a shopping experience at Walmart. So they're allowed to pick out items of necessity for gifts for their family members, as well as Walmart usually brings for breakfast that morning as well. So it's a good event, and again, we've done it a number of years now.
Thank you.
And they're accompanied by one of your officers.
Yes, our officers actually go with them to help pick out the items.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, motion carries. Item number 17, discussion decision on approval of resolution number 20-1443, a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, authorizing the Douglas Police Department to accept grant funding and enter into an agreement with the Phoenix Police Department as the Arizona ICAC Task Force lead agency for a reimbursable grant in the amount of $5,000 to pay for training and computer forensics in connection with internet crimes against children under this state-funded grant program. Mrs. Acosta, or you?
Mr. Flores?
Ms. Costa, I wasn't quite sure if Mr. Acosta was part of this,
I don't believe so.
but he was part of the item on 16.
I believe that was an overall for the whole police department. This is more specialized training, I believe, for their investigation division.
Would you feel comfortable recusing yourself?
Or if I need to.
We might as well just keep that pattern going. All right. Very well, thank you.
Mrs. Acosta has recused herself from discussion and voting on item number 17 at 7:16 p.m. Chief Fullen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Lieutenant Arnaldo Compoy applied for grant funding through the Arizona Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, the task force that we are actually a member of. And as noted, these funds will be used for direct related costs for training, investigations, computer forensics, and public awareness. In the efforts to investigate, prosecute, and deter the possession, production, and distribution of unlawful images depicting the sexual exploitation of minors and the utilization of the internet to seek children as sexual victims is the intent.
Excellent. May I have a motion?
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Valdenegro.
that the mayor and council approve resolution number 20-1443.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Valdenegro, seconded by Mrs. Morales to approve resolution number 20-1443. Any questions, discussion, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, motion carries. Item number 18, city manager reports. Ms. Prince.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. We've got two reports today, one from our Public Works Department on the Chino Road speed study, and then one from Luis Pedrosa on the right-of-way cleanup update.
And again, while they're getting set up, council members and public, this is an effort again for our outreach. We try to be more informative of some of the things that we've maybe discussed before and what's happening with them and what's going on. So if you have an item that you we're thinking about that, you know, you've had some questions from the public about, please mention it to Ms. Prince, and I'm sure that would come up on a future agenda item. Mr. Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Hewish, members of the council, thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to let you know what's going on with Chino Road. You may have noticed that we had some traffic tubes spread across it a few weeks back, and a couple of weeks ago it was closed so that we could take some soil borings there. This is Chino Road, north of 9th Street and south of the highway. There have been several accidents in this section of Chino Road, and there was concern that the accidents were due to the damage of the pavement there. So we took a look at the speed, the posted speed. The posted speed is 35 miles an hour. And what we wanted to do was decide if that was a safe speed or not. So in order to do that, we looked at the roadway design plans, and the roadway was designed to be driven at 45 miles an hour. So that's slightly above the posted speed, so that's a good thing. We looked at the traffic accident reports. There were 4 accidents in this area. No severe injuries or fatalities were reported, and it looked like 2 or 3 of the accidents were probably caused by excessive speed. One thing that isn't common knowledge, but I'd like to read this. It's from the ADOT website. No published research findings have established any direct relationship between the posted speed limit and crash frequency. In other words, if people are going to drive too fast and crash, they're going to drive too fast and crash. It doesn't matter what the black and white sign is. So ADOT makes a difference when, they make a distinction when there are severe injuries or fatalities. Since we didn't have those in here, there was no reason to change the posted speed limit because of the accident. We also looked at speed data. That's what the tubes were for. We give that information a lot of weight. In Arizona, again from ADOT's website, speed zoning in Arizona is based on the widely accepted principle of setting speed limits as near as practical to the speed at or below which 85% of the drivers are traveling. This speed is subject, of course, to downward revision based upon such factors as crash experience, roadway geometrics, and adjacent development. Okay, that's why we were looking at some of these other things. The 85th percentile speed through this section was generally over 40 miles an hour. It seemed like when people were traveling southbound, leaving the damaged section of pavement, they were going a little bit slower, more like 38, 39. But all the other directions, and northbound and southbound in front of the damaged section, all the speed limits there were, or all the speeds traveled there were over 40. So the speed data would support a 35 mile an hour speed limit as well. We did traffic counts at the same time that we did the speed study, or the speed data. This is a minor arterial. Cochise County says that a minor arterial should carry about 2,600 to 6,000 cars per day. We're at the low end of that at about 2,900 cars per day. So there's nothing there that would prompt us to change the speed limit from 35. And finally, field observations. I went out and I drove the road myself. I used 3 different vehicles, and the pavement is damaged. I'm sure you've all driven it. But I didn't have any trouble driving it at speeds in excess of 40 miles an hour. So based on all these factors, what we are going to do is we're going to keep the posted speed limit at 35 miles an hour, Some of the signs out there aren't quite appropriate. A couple of them say reduce speed ahead, but the speed limit doesn't change. So we'll remove those signs, and one of the signs says soft shoulder. But as you can see in the photo, the shoulders are paved, so there's no reason to have the soft shoulder sign. And there's a temporary sign out there on a barricade that says slow to 15 miles an hour. We're going to remove that, and we will put a yellow sign below the speed limit sign that advises people to go 25 miles an hour. That's not regulatory. The police department would not write a ticket for that, but it lets people know that they may want to slow down a little bit. And that should be a safe operation. Next slide, please. Also, and back to the damage to the pavement. I wanted to let you know that we are aware of it and we're taking care of it. The road was closed so that we could take soil borings. This is an old landfill, and some of the subgrade in there is soft. That's why the pavement is failing like this. So we have a geotechnical engineering company, Western Tech, that came out and they bored through the landfill all the way to the bottom to determine how deep it was. And then they looked at the material that came from the borings to determine what kind of a road base it would make. We know this part of it has failed, so we know there's something wrong with it. They're in the process of analyzing that, and then they will recommend some sort of a solution or solutions. We will select one of those, we'll draw up some plans, we'll get it out to bid, and we'll fix the roadway. It's going to be a while because we have to go through this process, but that's where we're headed with it. So this portion of Chino Road should be repaired in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Humphrey. Any questions or comments?
I have a
Yes, please,
question
Mr.
there.
Lindeman.
Mr. Humphrey, when they did the borings, could they determine how wide the landfill, the old landfill was, so that how long the road we have to be?
That's huge.
If you look at aerial photos, it's clear across the entire roadway.
Okay.
The boring was only a 4-inch hole,
Mm-hmm.
and
But they didn't
but we
start
know
on
that
one
the-
side and go to the other side.
Yes, they took them
They
on
did.
both sides of the road,
Okay.
and plus we have the as-built plans from ADOT, and that shows what they did out there.
And lengthwise also.
Right.
Okay.
It's clear across the entire roadway. In fact, the landfill goes both sides of the road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindeman. Anybody else have a question?
Mayor?
Yes, please.
Mr. Humphrey, who's responsible for the repair? Is it the city of Douglas or Cochise County, or is it the state of Arizona?
This is a city street, so we're responsible for these right now.
Just like Pan American.
Pardon me?
Just like Pan American, we're responsible for.
Yeah, we're responsible for the maintenance.
That's fine.
It's good. I did have a concern, and I know it wasn't part of the scope of what you're looking at, but if you remember it all, I did get a concern from a citizen that said some overgrowth of brush from the shoulders into the roadway, and I don't recall seeing any, but I don't know. I know it wasn't part of your scope, but did you notice anything along
There
that
was
line?
some excessive brush at the intersection of 9th Street. There was actually 2 accidents due to the overgrowth of brush. You couldn't see around if you were going off of 9th Street onto Chino. And there were 2 accidents that were attributed to the brush. The brush was trimmed back in that area, so the site distance is clear now. Was that the part you were maybe referring to?
Well, they were concerned that it was coming in from the sides and pushing your vehicle towards the center line.
We can check it, but as you can see, there's an 8-foot paved shoulder, so that should keep the brush back.
Should, but if you look at it, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm afraid we're a little bit behind with brush cutting because of COVID. We haven't had our prison crews available to take the brush. So we're working on it.
Yeah, and we're gonna start on that on the next. Any other questions for Mr. Humphrey? Thank you, Mr. Humphrey. I appreciate that precise study. Now we'll move on to right-of-way cleanup and Mr. Pedrosa.
Mr. Humphreys set that totally up for us.
He sure did. He set up that almost as if you're hitting a 3-1 fastball right down the middle. If you knew that, if you're a Houston Astro, you would know that 3-1 fastball is coming. I'm sorry. I digress.
Well, thank you both for that setup there, Mayor and Mr. Humphrey. The purpose of this report is to update the mayor and council on the city's efforts or beautification efforts that we've undertaken starting last month. We began a right-of-way cleanup project. We started September 8th, 2020. As the mayor and council knows, we are in partnership with DOC. We get the inmate crews to help us clean up right-of-ways. That's usually the existing process, and as we spoke, or Mr. Humphrey mentioned, the DOC crews are currently not available. So we came together as a city and various city departments in collaboration to be able to tackle this project. As you know, that's something that we wanted to address within these efforts. And we got parks, cemetery, development services, streets, wastewater, water, fleet, and sanitation. So we actually, from different spectrums, we were able to get different employees to play a part in this effort. So we're very thankful for the employees and really taking it to heart to really take part in this project. What it entailed was cleaning and spraying right-of-ways from the property line to the street, also including streets. We also did city-owned property, drains, and some vacant lots that are on the condemned list that we also cleaned up. We used, and also just for the public's sake, what is going on out there, you're going to be seeing, mowers and weed eaters. You're going to be seeing city staff handling those. I know that we received some concerns as to what was going on, so just for the public's sake, we want them to know that that's basically what's going on. These are the areas completed for empty city lots. Those are the areas there. We also did those drains there from G Avenue to 3rd Street and addressed those areas. These are the areas that were completed. I won't read them all. I'll show you the map, but I think it's a better picture. But just leave them up there for the public's sake for a while. But we've cleaned those areas, and we've also sprayed the ones on the right. Here's a map of the areas that we've covered. As you can see, it's a pretty large portion of the city. We have to estimate we've covered about 70-75% of the city at this point. Also, want to mention I did mention the 3 vacant homes that were in the process of abatement. That's why those were clean. What's left, as you saw from the map, but those are the areas that are currently left, and obviously we are following those areas that have been cleaned up. They're going to be sprayed, and the spraying will happen on the street side and on cracks in the sidewalk, so that we can get those weeds taken care of. We approximate that this project would end or around November 30th. That's again depending on staff availability, but that's our projection at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Pedrosa. And I think it merits mentioning that we've had some good people in the downtown area that have participated in organized cleanup of some of their alleyways and stuff around downtown, which is greatly appreciated, because as you can see, this is going to be a lengthy process. And we got behind the 8 ball with the lack of DOC crews, and my hat's off to staff, and the staff members that I've talked to that did this were very appreciative that they had an opportunity to help beautify Douglas. So while I will welcome the DOC crews back, I'm appreciative that the staff sees the need and everything, and my hat's off to them, and my hat's especially off to Ms. Rice, who helped organize that first cleanup project in the downtown area. And I also want to give a shout out and a thanks to the individual property owners that have taken upon themselves to maybe go a little bit farther beyond their property and try to clean up in those areas, and that's also greatly appreciated to help do that. I know many people don't have the means or the physical abilities to do those, and that's why we're out hitting those areas to try to make it happen. But don't hesitate if you're at home and you have a property, or you see your neighbor's property that needs some help and you have the ability to do that. Please reach out and help to do that, and we'll continue on as a city, I'm sure, of going on and doing what we can. We are in contact with the prison warden on their regulations and requirements for their what they believe would be a safety for COVID, and I'll leave that to the council now to any comments or questions. Mr. Valdenegro.
Mr. Pedrosa, we're gonna paint the pedestrian sidewalks, intersections, or is that part of the cleanup? We're painting, up by 10th Street, A Avenue, 15th Street, A Avenue. A lot of them need attention, or at least where pedestrians at least paved. Not just there, but on 15th Street on the F Avenue, and because Social Security is not open, but it's going to open eventually. People need to get around children's intersections, schools.
Good point. Mr. Burles, do you have an answer right now? If
No,
not,
I was Mayor, Councilmember Barber. It was not part of the scope of this project to do painting of sidewalks, but that's certainly something we can take note of and certainly address as a separate project. But it wasn't part of this.
and I'm sure Mr. Valdenegro was asking because the prison crews also would do those for us, and especially around schools and these areas of concern where we have a lot of foot traffic that goes through there. So I'm sure it'll come down the line as we do this, and we won't wait. I think Ms. Prince's commitment is that we're not going to wait and sit on our hands for DOC to come. We have to get out and do some of these things, which is greatly appreciated. But good question. Anybody else? Question? Yes, Ms. Costa.
I just want to thank you and please extend my gratitude to all of the employees who have worked together and shown the teamwork to get this done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. Mr. Lindemann?
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. And I appreciate all the work that Mr. Pedrosa puts into this. This is not part of your scope, I'm sure, but I wanted to ask, we didn't get much rain this year, but what's the plan for keeping that drainage ditch on Washington and 8th and going south clear? That's a perennial problem.
I know they've been working on it, and Mr. Humphrey, he ran off at the right time because it's a concern. But I'll let Ms. Prince give us an update.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Lindemann, our plan is to attack that like we have in the past. I know the DOC crews have done it, but one of the things that we are starting to do, which is what Mr. Pedrosa talked about, is really going through and spraying behind the cleanup, and that keeps the brush from regrowing. So that's part of our plan and getting ahead of it. I think through COVID, this kind of snuck up on us a little bit, but we will be prepared and ready for it in the future.
And also the dike needs repairing, and that's I don't know what we can do, pack it harder or something. But thank you.
True. Very astute point, because it is a concern. Anybody else? Thank you. Item number 19, informational items and reports from council on future agenda items requests. Mr. Grijalva.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quick points. Again, we voted on it tonight, and I want to thank the IDA for the movie screen. Initially, I was just going to ask for $25,000. I know that's nothing. But instead, they came back with get the best that you can get for the community. And the reason why it was only $1,000 more was because of our staff member and Jennifer Smith. She not only came at the perfect time when they were asking me the questions I couldn't answer about her department, but she also talked to the company, and they helped us out tremendously to get a 40-foot screen for our city. So I wanted to thank the IDA and Jennifer. Also, I'd like to thank the food bank. They weren't here for their certificate because of miscommunication. But again, we still need volunteers. It was just myself this time to help them out when they were doing the, for those who were signing up. And also, I'd like to thank the Coronado Courts. We've been talking about doing events there. They want me to do another town hall, but they also want the city to help them out. For their members, it's around 100 units that they have there with families, and they felt like they've been forgotten as far as the city doing things for them. So I've been trying to work with them to see what events we can bring there. They even mentioned the movie, so staff has been open to it. Maybe we get a movie in Ward 6, around that time, or at least a little block party for them. So I want to thank them, and I also want to thank staff for being open to the idea.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Anybody else have anything? Mrs. Morales?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Prince, I was asked by some people visiting from out of town at the cemetery if there's a way that we could make the hours more visible, maybe post them on the outside, on the pillars. They sent me a picture, said that the actual cemetery hours was smaller, and the please clean up after your pet sign was larger than the sign for the hours. So it would be nice if we could post the hours on the outside, maybe, so that people know that when the gates are closed, they know when they can come and visit.
Absolutely, something we can absolutely do.
I'll show you the picture.
And if I could add on our website, of course, also. Put that out there.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Shelton, please go ahead.
Yes. I have a real big concern about this. I know I talked to Don before I left a couple of weeks ago, but the quality of water right now and the amount of water in our wells. And I know the day I talked to her, I came home and they said we were going to have a very dry fall and a very dry winter. So I'd like to give a report on where our water stands, the amount of water. The wells are the depth of the wells, and then also the mineral content right now, and have it tested, because I think this, out of anything, is probably the most important thing we could be thinking about right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Mr. Baldenegro?
I just want to chime in
Ms.
real
Prince?
quick. Certainly can bring forward the, something from Public Works on where our water wells stand in terms of the amount of water. Just so everyone is aware, our water is tested daily. So we have great quality water, and Public Works will attest to that. So just don't want there to be any concerns. We absolutely have great quality water. Certainly can talk about the amount of water we have and how long that water will last, absolutely, in future council meetings.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Baldenegro.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say thank you to all the city employees that are here present and the ones that are not, because these are tough times we're facing right now, and these guys are doing one heck of a job trying to keep our city clean. Thanks for the overtime here, and keep up the overtime so we can get it completed.
Thank you, Mr. Baldenegro. Item number 20, adjournment. May I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Morales.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion by Motion by Ms. Morales and second acquiesced over to Mr. Shelton to adjourn the meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned at 7:43.